I'll go with the first question. Um, so every organization thrives to get the right people at the right time, at the right cost, with the right skill set. Do you think it's even possible, Samin, to achieve that in the kind of economy that we are kind of witnessing right now, and also achieve this year on year?
So good morning, everyone, and it's pleasant to see some of you here. So today, I think the topic that has been chosen by Business World is quite pertinent because workforce planning and talent management has a huge impact on business results at the end of the day, and therefore it needs to be very meticulously planned and executed. Getting the right people with the right skill sets at the right time is challenging in any which way, and more so in the times that we are living today. There is always a fight for talent. There is always a shortage of talent, but it is very important to have the right skill sets and the right people in place if you are, if you expect your businesses to ultimately make money, because that is where, that's the workforce is what is actually putting in the efforts to help you achieve that ultimate business goal. So while it is challenging, it is not really very, difficult or impossible, because there are definitely certain ways in which organizations can work towards, getting the right people and right skill sets in place. The most important thing is, first of all, to align the business goals with what is the skill sets or what are the competencies required to achieve those goals. So once you know those gaps, once you know those competencies and skill sets, you are able to figure out who would be the right talent to hire for that. Also, it is very important to get the numbers right. If there is inadequate workforce and manpower planning, you tend to either overstaff or understaff, the organization, and therefore it leads to either a loss in the profitability at the end of the day, or a burnout of employees who you are putting an overload of work on. uh, some ways of achieving this objective of getting the right people at the right time is by leveraging technology. We have so much of tech in place now. You have ATS systems, you have various aggregators of recruiters as well, who you can engage with, and you can ultimately get the right people in place. It is also important for you to understand, that not talent cannot be just bought in. You could also develop talent. So nurturing talent and engaging with them and making upskilling them is also very important. So if you do that, you're also make motivating your own workforce to take up the next roles, the next challenges. I think those are some of the ways. Ultimately, businesses need to be profitable, and therefore the HR departments need to act as partners to ensure that, by making sure that the right people are put in at the right place.
Yeah, I think the key word here, just to add to whatever Simin, you said, is right, right. So taking the right call, as to how much and what kind of skills and what kind of people we need at this point, that will also tie into our long term goals. I think that is very important. Anything else
True.
that you guys want to add? Please do.
No, I think hiring right people at the right time is absolute obvious. But I think where we need to really invest in is to see, if we have a talent today, how are we making that talent ready for our needs in the future? Because most times what we do is look at a short-term goal or a short-term sales plan or a short-term expansion and start to hire people to fulfill that need. More so in India, you will see the biggest solution that we have is put two hands to a problem to solve the problem. But I think it is more about nurturing talent, also developing your lateral talent, and then of course, workforce is not limited to manpower or woman power. Sorry, it's a DEI non-language. To have people in the organization full time. Gig working is very prevalent now, so the whole dynamics of workforce is changing, and I think we need to keep pace with that and find the right mix for our organizations to be able to deliver what they want.
Yep.
Anything else?
Just to add, great points. And of course, we can't get 100% right every time to get right people, right skills in the right places. So that bit of flexibility, I think setting expectations with the talent also is important, where, depending on the business needs, how we position them, place them, and, they also show the flexibility towards accepting some of those lateral positions if needed. So I think that one piece also helps, because at the end of the day, we as HR leaders and business leaders can't do it on our own. We need acceptance from the talent as well. So just that one bit of flexibility is also, I feel, somewhere adds a lot of flexibility.
Thank you so much. The next question is for you, Irani. If you can let us know, how does an organization maximize its profits through accurate workforce planning and also talent management?
So I think, I'm assuming most of the people sitting around here are from HR. So talent management is an all-encompassing word. So I'll touch upon that first, Lata. I think typically if you talk about talent management, we try and look at our hypos. We try and work and develop them through the channels of taking a career, the next leap in the career, and then growing. And a lot of work happens around our traditional 9 box and the top box. What we forget at large is that there is a sustained workforce that is sitting in between the laggards and the top performers. And I think talent management in its definition now needs to look at interventions of not just focusing on your top talent, but also looking at how you can, because the base of the organization, 60% of your organization is run by these people who are successful in what they do. They're not underachieving or overachieving, but having that balance is important. And I think it's critical for organizations to develop a strategy which touches all the forays. The second thing that I believe in, and more and more I read and more I interact, and at the age that I'm in, I start to believe that what you're not good at, you can't really develop. What you're good at, you can nurture to make it stronger. And Gallup's has its strength finder, and world over there is this talk about positive affirmation, appreciative inquiry. I think it is about finding the strengths of individuals in an organization and nurturing those strengths to give you the results. Most times we start to say these are the 2 things you don't have, and we expect at the age of 45 for the person to change the behaviors that he or she is so used to and make a leap. So I think certain things like that, very critical for talent management. Coming to workforce planning, I touched upon it as I responded earlier. I think HR cannot enter the space of workforce planning after the business strategy has been defined. HR has to have a seat on the table to understand what is the short-term and the long-term business strategy. And aligned to that, HR needs to see whether that strategy can be fulfilled by hiring permanent workforce, gig workforce, or we need to develop certain people for the skills. And because they culturally know the organization, is it the pool that's sitting in the organization that needs to be upskilled? Yeah. So I think, there is this hiring for fulfilling a particular need, developing people for the longer term strategy, and thirdly, looking at what is the ROI of the investment that we're making. We were just outside, just to share with you all, talking about how all of us are taking bets on campus hires. But all of us unanimously felt that the time they spend in an organization is 2 to 4 years. So I think the real challenge that all of us have is that if you're betting on youngsters coming into the workforce, which is extremely important, how do we curb infant attrition? And one of the things, Lata, that I talk about all the time is the responsibility that a manager has towards workforce planning and workforce development. When managers start to take accountability for the people, I think magic starts to happen. So, workforce planning for profitability starts when the business strategy is being made. Hire the right people, look at the productivity or performance or the return on investment that you're getting, because all of us work to a business goal, and nurture your talent likewise.
Yep. Yeah, very well said. And of course, most organizations, the biggest cost is people costs.
Absolutely.
So if you don't look at ROI, obviously you're going to have, so from there, the next question is really about the last year and this year, which are regarded as years of layoffs. what do you all think is the impact of this on employees? Of course, all of us know, but if we can amplify and discuss this a little more, the kind of insecurity that's loomed in, right? And also, many people are saying that this is because of lack of appropriate workforce planning. That was, we went into a hiring spree, and then we ended up in the situation. Now we are cutting, flab, is what we get to hear. So, would like to hear from you. What are your views on this?
Okay.
Any of you can.
I'll start. Yeah. So you're absolutely right. I mean, the impact that it has on employees, everybody is quite aware, because people start feeling a little jittery about, is it going to be me next? What is going to happen? But that's not necessarily true for all organizations. And as we were discussing outside, it's not true for certain organizations like, per se, TCS or Infosys or the likes, where it's not just a mass hiring or a mass layoff happening every day, right? So I agree that, to a certain extent, yes, this could have been a repercussion of not adequately planning your manpower, or probably being over optimistic about what the future holds for, and really thinking that, it's going to be like how it's going on. So, I mean, during COVID, we saw huge numbers that were either hired or laid off, and the similar thing is happening now. Tech companies were suddenly on a boom because there was suddenly a demand for technology, and everybody, including our organization, which is really not a tech organization, but we needed people from the IT sector, and we were not getting anyone. So we were paying left, right, center, whatever somebody demanded, we would pay them that. And after a while, after about 2 years or something, we started realizing why this is really not needed. They may have asked for what was expected at that time, because that was their day, okay? That was the time that they were demanding. But now we have to figure out whether it is sustainable for our organization or not. Having said that, I mean, we haven't laid off anyone, but frankly, I think definitely there is some mismatch of what the prediction was as to how the economy is going to be, how the tech revolution is going to continue, and how the demand is going to be. And probably that's why that so much of hiring was done, and suddenly with so much of geopolitical things happening around the world, with the Ukraine war and with the demands probably going down, with the market dynamics changing, that the layoffs have started happening.
Right. Right.
I can add to that. So giving a little bit of a twist, Lata, to looking at it from talent perspective, right? Because you mentioned about the insecurities that may creep in.
Yeah.
So the way I look at it is, what's in your control, right? What companies will do, they will do. Do you have control about some of those things? I doubt you may not. But about yourself, you can do a lot of things. You can invest in yourself. You can learn different skill sets. You can do a lot of research before jumping ship, right? Some of those you can go through the history of the organizations that somebody is wanting to go and join them. I think some basic hygiene things, and bring in that maturity. I think in a way, unfortunately, when HR tries to educate the talent in the existing organization on some of these things, they tend to perceive it as, of course, you want to retain me, so that's why you are talking about some of these things. But when we look at general talent, I think somewhere they need to also develop that maturity, irrespective of, especially the age group, what we spoke about, and like campus hires and 2 to 4 years bracket. They need to start building that maturity to do some of these hygiene checks before taking the decisions of just going for extra take home. So I think what they can have control over, how they invest in themselves, how they understand about and do research on the companies that they want to join. This is how they can curb some of the insecurity that may be creeping in, and at least they will be not regretting that they did not take an informed decision.
Sure. But how much ever you research, I mean, in my view, how much ever you research beyond a point, you can't really predict. Who predicted, like Cisco, companies like Cisco or, Google will, start laying off, right? So just would like to kind of add, I think, of course, you can't get emotionally attached beyond a point to your job. That is one big takeaway for everyone. I think, people have started looking at things in balance. But in my view, it's also brought in a lot of realization in people that, okay, if I don't add real value to business, if my work is not impacting business in a big positive way, then I am going to lose, right? The game, right? So I think that's one big realization, just to add to whatever you said. Yeah.
I think just 2 points of view. I think COVID brought with itself a disruption, which I think was for the good, because our processes got digitized. We started simplifying things. Our customer reach became much more frictionless. But I think somewhere we looked at, say for edtech, for example, edtech boomed like nobody's business. All classes were happening, you know, and the industry, the edtech industry, thought that that is here to stay.
Yeah.
And I think what has happened, and even the training industry, I'm talking about edtech and training because it's closer to HR. You know, suddenly, if you talk to people now, people want to do classroom trainings. Or otherwise, they want to go to just one or two brands, which is we'll go to Coursera and we will do what we need online. But if you are in India, can you please do a face-to-face training? So I think the disruption had its own benefits, but I think we forecasted for way too long to say this is going to stay. And the second thing that I believe, and this is, you know, we've all gone through very tough phases in our professional careers. All of us go through at least one. But I believe that water finds its own level. And I remember a year and a half back when we were hiring, and there were these youngsters with offers up to 300%, bargaining, saying, can you give me 300% and I will join? And organizations were prudent to say, sorry, go ahead. And they joined all these famous names. Today, it is just baselining that, Lata, if you ask me. You know, we coming back to them finding their real worth. I think we were at a sub-abnormal, and, you know, the price for talent is always normalized in the real world. Two, I think we are also being prudent given the recessionary trends world over. But I'm told that India is insulated. So fingers crossed for us that we will not see more layoffs and we will again start to grow and prosper.
Do you think HR has a big role to play in this, the employee sentiments, and to ensure that, you know, people are aware of what's really happening, and they are able to add value, real value?
I think we, you know, every individual needs to introspect, and I think you made that point that, or Som said that what is the value that you're adding to the business, and you know that better than anyone else. You know how much of productivity you are generating for a company. And while we sat blindsided to say, I will not be the one, it will be my neighbor, you know, but the reality hit. Of course, I'm not talking great things about the organizations and how they separated people. And that is where I think HR had a role to play. Because at the end of the day, we're building brands and culture, and it is nothing but how we deal with people. So I think the cultural context of an organization and the sanctity of the culture of the organization becomes center stage at this point. And I think HR is a big flag bearer of culture, so to say. So I, you know, how we could have reacted, how we could have dealt with people rather than sending them a mail. And I remember 3 months back when Elon Musk was doing what he was doing in Twitter, there was this whole conversation in the HR fraternity to say, if he's successful, you know, it will just give so much confidence to so many organizations to just start laying off people for the right productivity. And lo and behold, I think people saw that coming true. So I think he inspired a lot of organizations to do what they're doing. And it was that fear that was looming. Not that I have anything against, I think he's a brilliant guy, but, you know, IQ and EQ not always match, but that's where we are.
So I agree what Irani just said, you know, HR does have a big role to play, especially in times like this. I mean, we all have gone through the COVID phase where it was extremely tough for most organizations, especially manufacturing and sales-driven organizations, where layoffs were happening. A lot of organizations, including ours, we resorted to more and more communication. I think that was the key. HR went on an overdrive, actually. I think we were over-communicating at times as well. But that was really needed to make people realize that this is their organization and we are here for them. So, you know, that I think that was definitely missing in some of the layoffs that have happened. And HR could have definitely done it much better. We were dealing with people after all. I mean, and if we deal with them like we do with machines, then we're really not doing justice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Anything else? So just, going further into this, we have seen this shift from strategic workforce planning to operational. It's more about now and for the next quarter, and that's how even stakeholders are looking at things. The investors are looking at what is your margins in the next quarter, next year. So what do you think is going to reap benefits in the long run? Okay, operational workforce planning or strategic? So if you could take that.
Yeah, I think both go hand in hand. The way I look at it, I'll add another element in between the operational and strategic. I'll add tactical as well. So the way I look at it, you can think of a vision where you want to build a house, or probably have a farm or an orchard, and the long term strategic view obviously would be about what you want to achieve from that, right? Versus the operational aspects more closer home on getting the basic foundations right, attacking things on a daily basis, doing the needful, right? If I have to speak from a health standpoint, for example, if you're trying to get to a certain stage on the fitness standpoint, it cannot happen in a day. You have to be at it consistently. Those are the operational aspects that we do consistently on a daily basis. The tactical thing comes into play when it comes to, are you doing the right things? Keeping that in mind, operationally you attack those things. It's tactical, resulting in the long term strategic objectives. So that's how I would look at it. It cannot be looked in a siloed way. It has to go and hand in hand, and this is where everybody needs to be bought in on the vision, including the leadership, talent, everybody that helps in running organizations. Everybody needs to work hand in hand and be at it on a daily basis, keeping the larger vision in mind. That's my take.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you made a very good point on the siloed approach. You can't just think long term, because you have to be in the business in the long run to be able to see the long run, right, happening. So you have to look at tactical things, you have to look at operational aspects, you have to look at, but I think the key takeaway here is, so every tactical decision also that you take has to somehow connect the dots to the long run. It should not be completely off. You should be on that same path of fitness, or whatever you're trying to achieve in the long run, it has to tie in. That's what I think.
I think it's also got to do with agility, the way you kind of adapt yourself quickly. Obviously, you are going to make your long-term plan. You are going to, finally have a vision of, this is where I want to be as an organization, and this is the plan that I have, including a manpower plan and my, how I'm going to manage my talent to reach that place. But things change overnight. Events like COVID happen, there would be wars happening, there could be some geopolitical circumstances that would require you to change. There could even be market dynamics, you need to certainly adapt. And I think organizations that are agile, that are able to quickly, rework on things, are the ones that are going to really survive well. And their plans, you're right, ultimately have to be linked to that ultimate strategic plan, but that operational or tactical decisions have to be taken very, very quickly.
I'll add here, Lata, I think, the strategic workforce planning or the strategic planning is extremely imperative for the organization to survive in the long run. And the eye cannot move away from the strategic imperative that we have. But in the way, we have milestones that we have to achieve to reach there, like all of you said. And it is extremely important that we have an eye on the ball, but I do believe that the strategic vision should be clear in everyone's mind. So while we are doing this in the 6 months horizon or the near term, what we are building for the future is this. And Simin's point on agility is becoming so important, because most times organizations in the plight of doing a short-term thing get more and more internal focused. We start talking about processes, we're talking about interdepartmental collaboration not working, and we slowly stop to forget the customer, and the customer becomes way removed from what we are doing. And when that starts to happen, organizations start to lose touch of market share and all of that. So while we plan for it, I think the balance of, I think everyone should know, say for example, for the organization I come from, we have a 5 frontier strategy. It's known to each and every employee world over. So everyone knows we're working to that 5 frontier strategy. But in our individual markets, in our individual functions, we know that we have to achieve this to lead there.
Yeah.
And that balance, like you said, becomes extremely imperative. Yeah. But mostly in sales organizations, there's a lot of near term. And a lot of near term happens, and then I think all the focus is, how can we, be thinking less of customers and more of internals. So I think we should just do more of such panels and have people talk so that we know what's happening outside, because I think shared knowledge is the best way to fulfill a customer's dream. So
We are open to questions from the audience, and also would like to hear your views on what we just discussed. Any other point you guys want to make, or
There are no questions. We answered everything.
we answered everything?
I just, I think we have 9 more minutes as given by the moderators. So I'm trying to fill in at least 2 of those 9 minutes. And I'm hoping one of you will think of a question by then. I think we need to redefine our parameters of workforce planning. I think that is becoming more and more important for us HR professionals to think not just about what an individual or the workforce will deliver today, but 2 years hence and 4 years hence. And in the process, and we were talking about this, Lata, Semeen and Som, is how do we develop them, how do we invest in them, how do we make them feel that we are authentically involved with them. Most times, the response is you're developing me, you have a short-term need. But I think organizations that are kind of investing in their people without much of an expectation, but telling them that this will prepare you. And if you are well prepared, the organization is well prepared. I think that whole capability building, the whole nurturing of talent to keep learning continuously is becoming a big imperative for us to retain talent. So how much ever we hire, if we can't retain, that's our biggest problem. And the cost of attrition is at least 1 to 1.5 times the annual salary of a person. And that most times gets unnoticed, because business in the fervor of doing more and more sales will keep asking HR, I'm having a loss of business because this person's not there. And you tell them, but I hired 10 and you lost 8. That's not in their ROI metrics. And that's always in the HR's mind to say, we hired, we trained, and the person's gone, so we've lost so much cost. That cost in most organizations is a shadow hidden cost. So I think it becomes imperative for us to look at that and take responsibility of how we're nurturing talent through the way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think very well said. Just would like to. Okay, there is a question.
What are some metrics that in your organizations get reviewed at CEO and CEO minus 1 levels to look at impact of talent management? Or the audible?
Yeah, you were. A very good question.
Can you just repeat it? What were the metrics?
What are the metrics that CEO or one level below are measured on?
What metrics that denote the impact of talent management to business results get reviewed at a CEO and CEO minus 1 levels in your organizations? I just wanted to get an understanding of what's the standard currently.
I can give it a shot. At least my MD, we work on a daily basis. Some of the metrics that I can think about are, one is, of course, there's an eye always on the attrition space, like Irani mentioned, right? It goes unnoticed, which is very, very critical when we look to hire. How are we doing from a hiring standpoint, right? What is the cost per hire looking like? Are we having too much of bench, or are we adequate enough to manage the workload? That's another aspect that we look at. Beyond that, from investment standpoint in these skills, how much of budgets are we utilizing from training standpoint, and are they truly yielding results for us? Like when you're trying to upskill people, you have a certain vision in mind on what they will be delivering on the project side. that they are working on, is it doable? Are they doing well enough or not? It may not be immediate results, but you tend to go back because you almost have a year's time to look at some of these things and to keep yourself honest. I think these are some of the 2 or 3 matrices that I can think of, definitely, which help in directly correlating with the business results.
I can add to one more
Thanks,
here
Om.
because we are a sales-driven organization and therefore attrition is extremely critical. You need to keep an eye on that. Irani was right. The cost of rehiring is extremely high, and therefore you need to figure out how you're retaining those people. So we also have certain apps that we have deployed on our Salesforce, mobiles, which gives them general nudges on a daily basis so that their productivity is up there, so that they are given a sort of a nudge on a daily basis. Okay, this is what you need to do. This is where you are. This so that they are kept motivated as well. So attrition again is an extremely critical matrix to be sort of kept in mind. Yeah.
So I'll
Thanks,
just
Sibyl.
add, I think our organization, we look at 3 more metrics. We look at internal mobility of people. We also look at how many roles have we filled from within. So that kind of shows that our investment is really paying off. We're also conscious of the changing workforce. So we look at what we call early careers. So the number of workforce who are below 28 years of age. And we pay a special focus to what we call infant attrition, because we realize, so we look at attrition not just as a whole number, but where is it that we're losing in terms of tenure or etc. So that gives us more. And I know March 8th, closer home, we will start talking about DEI, but there are other metrics that I think all of us measure, is what is our diversity index, and how is it that we're retaining diverse talent, what are our diversity percentages, what is our promotion, typically a promotion tenure for a woman versus, or a diverse talent, woman is a wrong word to use, a diverse talent versus male, is there a difference in the number of years you take to promotion? So all of that I think is becoming extremely pertinent in terms of how we do talent management now. I hope
Thank you
we
so
answered.
much. May I request for the name of the app that you deployed, Simin?
It's an internal system that we've developed.
Thanks.
You
So
talked
there
about
is an app called salesforce.com, SFDC.
That's so Salesforce is for tracking the sales, but this is more like a nudge. Worksorbo was I think the source from where we had. So it's like nudges. It's not just tracking productivity. It's more like giving you what you should be doing today. And it's actually helped. When we looked at the productivity, it went up about 18% in the first month itself. It's because every day you're kind of given that little nugget, and it will be different. I am motivated by earning more money. So I will be given a nudge, itna incentive ban gaya aapka. Somebody else says, I want to be top on the leaderboard. So I am just 2 steps away from reaching the top, that way. So, and it's all AI driven. So it's quite interesting actually.
Yeah, it actually sounds very intriguing.
Yeah,
A
it's
use
like-
case or a case study on this would be very interesting to go through.
Yeah.
You spoke about the layoffs. Okay, laying off poor performers is one thing, but the mass layoffs that we are seeing recently probably is also a factor of poor workforce planning. And we are talking about workforce planning and talent management significance in business results. While there are enough studies to point that layoffs can be counterproductive for the organization in the long run because it leaves talent, right? And it makes you profitable, less profitable in the long run as well, right? So given that today we are managing businesses quarter after quarter, what can be done in terms of creating a better workforce planning? Because end of the day, we are making, when we say we, the community is making the talent pay for workforce planning.
I think you hit it bang on in terms of, but I think prudence of the talent also was important. If you look at how, the workforce was approaching, and I don't blame it, it's human psyche. You have a good brand name, you trust the brand name. And then, but the truth be told, were you occupied the whole day while you were there in the last 6 months? Did you reap enough work for yourself and the organization? Did you really add value? If you were to just ask people, most people felt that there was excess, and I think organizations started talent hoarding. Can we hoard the best talent for the future? And of course, it was a very, very messy workforce planning. Uh, However, it is easier for me to comment. I think a lot of thinking went into it because there were very big organizations who did that. Uh, but now with top line staying where it is, the bottom line is where the attention has gone to. Because top line is not growing. When I worked in organizations where when I would go and approach people, they would say HR का काम तभी होता है जब business अच्छा चलता है. जब business अच्छा नहीं चल रहा है ना तो HR के ऊपर कोई ध्यान नहीं देता है. So you stay put with your interventions. अभी business पे focus करते हैं. But I think that whole mismatch happened at that time, that we thought business could be run by just hoarding people, and people forgot that I would best know my worth and what I'm adding value to. I think, and it's a wrong word to say youngsters because everyone has gone into that.
Yeah.
And I think we've also, planned for a horizon which we really didn't have sight of, and we took disruption too far. I think we were all grappling with something like COVID for the first time. And we were seeing opportunities as organizations for the first time. So did we go wrong? We did go wrong, but was it absolutely fatal to go wrong? No, it was a human mistake. So yes,
But yes, of course,
yeah.
talent is paying for it.
Talent is paying for it. But I think culturally, organizations that we talk about organizations that are agile, organizations that are more traditional. I think the organizations which were a little more traditional actually managed this well, and you see less of
Yes.
talent going away. So in that
Also,
sense,
yeah.
we needed to balance that.
Absolutely. Just wanted to add. I think organizations that went wrong. I'm assuming because we were not in that. As an organization, we did not face that issue because every time we were planning to hire, we looked at per unit economics very closely, not just top line growth. A lot of organizations probably invested to grow their top line and were just focused on making the most of the opportunity. They did not put enough emphasis on how it's going to really work out from a margin perspective. That's my perspective. Yeah.
Yes.
On this. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think time's up.
Due to the
One
paucity
last
of
question.
time.
Yeah, one last question. Yeah.
What will be those? And second is, if on a delta perspective, between a best-in-class organization and a laggard, what would be a delta in terms of the business results or business outcome? If there is a number which you guys have ever used or come to in terms of matrices, it will be interesting to know.
I mean, for a sales organization, productivity per person, depending on the level that you are, and productivity, and the second metrics that we'll say is to tail ratio, is to say how many managers have you hired for managing the workforce. So most times organizations get that balance wrong. So you start to hire too many managers. So therefore, there is a manager to manage a manager who's managing the third manager, who's managing the direct workforce, who's closest to the customer. So for organizations that I have worked in, two metrics that I can talk about is individual productivity and as well as to tail ratio, to say how many managers actually are managing the person who is absolute frontline in front of the customer.
E2S could also be another matrix that you would be looking, especially when it comes to sales organizations. So what is the expenses to the sales per person?
Yeah. Employee cost to revenue ratio
Yeah.
could be a good metric to look at. What is the kind of cost and what percentage of that cost is percentage of the overall revenue? How is it against the industry standards? These are some of the things that you could look at to get it right probably. Best in league workforce planning.
Best in?
Best in?
So what are the factors?
Planning the best of the breed. What will be the 5 ingredients that they will do very, very well?
I think the first thing that they would do is really look at the business goals and the strategies ahead. So, planning ahead is something very important. Second would be what are the roles or the competencies that would be required in the future. So, planning for the future is important. Third is what is the workforce you have today and how are you going to nurture it and how are you going to develop it to actually reach there. That would be the fourth. Fifth is, of course, your operational costs. What are the numbers required and how are you actually figuring out whether these numbers are right or not? And ultimately, how is it impacting your bottom line? So, I mean, as we were just discussing, there was a time when we were getting tech people for 4 times, 5 times their actual worth. So, are we doing the right thing? Are we actually taking the right steps? I think these are few things that any organization would be doing.
Yeah. I think just one more point to add there is the strategy of build, borrow, buy.
Yeah.
What you build internally, what you borrow from consultants, and what you buy in terms of a gig workforce. So that becomes imperative also in workforce planning.
Also have a backup plan for a backup plan for a backup plan.